Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Your day moves fast. Your news should too. That's why there's a new and improved Wish TV app, bringing you more local news, breaking alerts, live streaming, weather forecasts, radar, and Indiana sports, all in one place. Customize your news feed to see the stories that matter most to you and get the information you need when you need it. Download the new and improved Wish TV app today on iOS or Android and take News 8 with you everywhere. Now, from your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
An Indiana congressman says the new airstrikes on Iran do not mean chances for a peace deal are dead. Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist in for Phil Sanchez. Congressman Marlin Stutzman tells me he views the new strikes as a way to bring Iran back to the negotiating table. We also discussed why he signed on to a letter demanding the WNBA better protect players like Caitlin Clark. And let's bring in Congressman Marlin Stutzman. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Garrett, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
I want to begin with the new strikes on Iran. At this point, are peace negotiations dead?
No, I don't think so. I think this, again, is just the efforts to, of course, hold the Iranians accountable to the MOU. This is part of the consequences, and the Iranians know that, knowing that if they break the MOU agreement, that there's going to be something that's going to try to bring them back to the negotiating table. These guys have proven over and over in Iran, the IRGC, that they're liars, they're cheaters, stealers. They've move the goalpost. They're hard to negotiate with. The only thing they understand is raw power. And I think that's what President Trump is showing them, is that he will use raw power to bring them to the negotiating table. If we walk away, they're going to go back to, of course, developing their military capabilities. I think that their nuclear ambitions would be very difficult. But again, these are zealots. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we have to hold them accountable. And if that takes the force of our military, then we have to use that.
Given Iran's extensive bunker network, will dropping any more bombs make any difference? Are we at the point now where we would have to send in ground troops to gain control of any of their nuclear material?
Yeah, at some point, there will have to be people on the ground to be sure that we secure the nuclear dust that we know is underground. You know, our intelligence says that we feel pretty confident that it would take either the Chinese or the United States equipment to be able to attain that. So that's not the greatest concern today. I think the greatest concern is the fact that the IRGC continues to hold the Strait of Hormuz hostage. And of course, they continue to attack their neighbors. And they use Hezbollah again as a proxy to attack Israel. I think the visit that President Trump made with NATO allies in Turkey this past week, again, proves the point that NATO needs to step up. They all say that Iran is the leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world, but very few of them are doing anything about it.
Since you're on the House Budget Committee, I want to ask, have there been any further conversations in Congress about suspending the federal gas tax due to the war with Iran? And are you still opposed to that idea? You told me a few months ago that you had some pretty serious financial concerns there. Yeah,
there has not been any further discussion of suspending the federal gas tax. And I think that we know the situation of the federal budget. It's not good. There's too much debt and deficits. We are making some adjustments dealing specifically with fraud and waste, especially when it comes to welfare programs and healthcare programs around the country, in a couple of states like Minnesota and California. But again, I think President Trump is doing the right thing by holding the IRGC accountable, and hopefully we get this problem resolved sooner rather than later. I think we all have seen, as when the announcement of the MOU was released, that gas prices did drop fairly quickly. We were actually down below $3 in Northeast Indiana and a couple of places. But in the long run here, we need to make sure that the region is safe and that the country, that the United States is safe from any sort of nuclear ambition by the IRGC.
You and several other members of Congress, including Congresswomen Victoria Spartz and Aaron Houchin, are demanding the WNBA explain how it reviews physical hostility on the court. That was in response to Phoenix Mercury player Alyssa Thomas pushing her fist against Fever guard Caitlin Clark's throat during a game last month. Do you believe this merits a federal investigation?
I don't know that it merits a federal investigation yet. We want to see, of course, the WNBA and any industry for that matter self-regulate itself and not let incidences like the Alyssa Thomas fist to the throat of Caitlin Clark happen again. I mean, that was so blatant, and the fact that the referees missed it. And Caitlin was in a vulnerable spot, laying on the floor, and how the referees missed it is beyond me. And the fact that the WNBA only suspended Thomas for one game, again, is beyond me. This is an important time for the WNBA. If it wasn't for Caitlin Clark, the WNBA would probably be defunct. It wouldn't even be here. But she has brought a new excitement and an energy to a basketball league that I think is important. It inspires young women and men, of course, to pursue their dreams.
We see flagrant fouls in the NBA, and the NHL is notorious for its fights on the ice. What makes this any different?
But there seems to be an animosity towards Caitlin Clark by other players, by other coaches. Caitlin has said repeatedly over and over, she doesn't want this attention. She just wants to play basketball, and she's a phenomenal player. And we want to see the WNBA be successful. It's an inspiration to young women. It's an inspiration to Americans across the country. And that's why I think it's important for them, for the WNBA to step up and protect all of their players.
What changes specifically do you want to see from the WNBA?
I want to see that they're going to take fouls like this seriously, and that they're going to hold players who do these, who are the offenders in these fouls, be held accountable. If that incident would have happened on a shop floor here in northern Indiana, at a machine shop, there would have been a charge of assault, or even, some sort of legal action could have been taken place. It was done in the court of play, which obviously, is up to the referees to call fouls. But I don't want to say that that's what should have been the charge, but that was a serious foul against a fellow player. And I want to see that the WNBA is going to self-regulate. They're going to hold every player accountable, and that they're going to be sure that their players are safe out on the court.
Before we go, I want to return to foreign policy. President Donald Trump has said he will remove Syria from the state sponsor of terrorism list, subject to review from Congress. You have met with Syria's leader, Ahmed al-Sharaa. Based on what you have seen, is it safe for us to delist Syria?
I do think it is safe to delist Syria right now. And again, as we've always said with Syria, we're watching their actions more than we're listening to their words. But they have been following up on what they said they're going to do. There have been some skirmishes in the country. There are still hostilities between different groups of people in Syria towards one another. But I think, overall, since we voted to lift the sanctions in Congress earlier this year, that it's appropriate to delist them as a state-leading terrorist country. President al-Sharaa has a very tough job of unifying the country. I thought one of the wisest decisions that he made was when he was asked about helping eliminate Hezbollah out of Lebanon. He refused that. I think that was a smart move on his part. He doesn't have a military strong enough. He doesn't have the influence in the region to handle that. He's still trying to build his own country in Syria.
Coming up, a $200,000 state advisor role with no written job duties. We find out what the governor's special advisor on child services is doing with your tax dollars. Welcome back. New documents are shedding light into what the governor's special advisor on child welfare has been up to. The job pays $200,000 a year. Our Kara Kenny found out what the special advisor is doing with that money.
The former director of the Indiana Department of Child Services doesn't work here at the Government Center. He doesn't work here at the State House either. Adam Krupp works remotely as a special advisor to the governor. We obtained these 9 pages. These are his reports to the governor outlining what he's been doing. Records we obtained from the governor's office reveal Krupp has been submitting weekly reports dating back to April 27th. They show Krupp has met with lawmakers, DCS leadership, a consulting firm, a technology vendor, and others. They also show Krupp spent time reviewing the DCS website, doing research on child welfare legislation and practices, and conducting a state-by-state review of child welfare systems. The reports also reveal he's planning a trip to South Bend to visit Notre Dame's research facility. These records are crucial because the special advisor role has no job description. We asked the governor about that back in April.
How do you hold him accountable if there's no job description for that position?
It's easy to hold you accountable. You know, he left it because he had a personal issue. And if you've got somebody that did a good job and then had an issue personally with it, I'm going to be one that gives you a second chance.
Krupp has not responded to requests from Indiana's I-Team to talk about his special advisor role and his reports. We shared them with State Senator Fadi Kadora.
It is not the best use of taxpayer dollars. Those are administrative, clerical type of functions that could have been absorbed easily under any regular management position or even a lower entry-level staff member within the agency. That type of work does not warrant $200,000 annual salary.
The senator currently works as a chief financial officer for a statewide nonprofit organization and says the state creating a special advisor position is just adding more bureaucracy.
That flies against everything the governor has said. And to me, at a time when the state is reducing benefits and programs for the most vulnerable, this does not make any sense to me. And after reviewing the job or the tasks that were performed, I am more convinced that this is not appropriate.
He's calling on the governor's office to act
by either formalizing a role for the former director with a clear job description by which the employee will be held accountable for their performance, or terminating employment and saving the taxpayers $200,000.
A report from last month shows Krupp is looking into the use of AI in the child welfare system, including cost-saving opportunities. Indiana's I-Team has filed a formal records request to obtain any reports or findings put together by the special advisor. We'll share it when we get it. We've put all 9 pages on our website. Just scan the QR code, go to the Indiana's I-Team section, look for the story, and you can review all of the documents for yourself. I'm Kara Kenny with Indiana's I-Team.
And we've contacted Governor Braun's office about the reports he received from Krupp. We have not yet received a statement. Coming up, Indiana's best political team weighs Krupp's role and the warning from congressional Republicans to the WNBA.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting.
Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Mario Massalamani. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
I want to begin with our investigation to Adam Krupp's role. Mario, Governor Braun often touts his administration as an example of efficiency and financial discipline. Does this fly in the face of that?
I don't think so, not at all. I know Adam really well. I've known him for years. One of the most intelligent guys in state government. I think he is a phenomenal, experienced guy that the Indiana and Hoosiers are lucky to have. Here's the thing. I think 10 years ago, people would have said, you know, working from home or working through Zoom, but we went through COVID. And we realized that our government can run efficiently through work from home, working through Zoom. And somebody who I love to death is Kara Kenny. And even in this report, it shows that he is actually doing work. He is not just sitting at home on a couch eating bonbons. He's actually doing work. You know, using AI to try and improve DCS and maybe create cost savings, a phenomenal idea. So I think that, you know, use your talent the best way you can. If it's remotely, let it be remotely as long as they're being efficient.
Laura, you were chief of staff to then First Lady Maggie Kernan. How unusual is this kind of role in any governor's administration? And to Mario's point, I mean, we do now have the ability to work from home now. Does that sort of attenuate some of the concerns some people were raising about this?
Well, we do have the ability to work from home, and I think it's always important to be flexible about that. But what I'd like to do is just actually take a step back and look at DCS as a whole and remove Adam Krupp from this and even from the discussion. DCS is woefully understaffed by their own admission. The latest report that came out last fall showed that they need probably 200 caseworkers, and only 6 of the 19 field offices were appropriately staffed. So when you look at someone who is making $200,000 a year, I don't know if they're also getting payroll, I don't know if they're getting retirement or those other benefits. When you look at that number, just that number alone, and you think about a caseworker makes $47,000 a year, that's 4 caseworkers with money left over to apply to other things. And even under when Adam Krupp was in that leadership role, DCS cut jobs in middle management and upper management. So it becomes really hard when you're trying to make the case to an office or to a team or to try and deliver services when you have someone who is at that salary level, had left, has now come back. It's really hard to say that, especially when you're so short-staffed on the front line. And Mario knows this too. I mean, you worked for Carl Brizzi. I mean, we saw what happened with DCS in previous years when DCS was not appropriately staffed.
As both a former prosecutor and as a criminal defense attorney now, I deal with DCS on a regular basis. And they are not only understaffed, but they're also very young and inexperienced.
Yeah.
However, to your point, I think if Adam is able to use AI to help with some of the bureaucracy, some of the processing of like the filings and the reports, I think that if we can save some time through that, it could be a benefit, right? AI is the next wave. So if Adam is able to help improve like the efficiencies, well, I don't know why you're laughing. But,
I mean, you are a really good lawyer. I really think that, you're an excellent lawyer, and I think you're probably excellent in the courtroom. It just goes back to the issue of its priorities. It's a question of this is how much is being spent. And when you are in a situation like, in the governor's office, for example, I mean, they're looking at $533 million less in gas tax revenue coming in, right? They are going back every year saying to the legislature, we don't have enough money here. We've got to make cuts here. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. So it begs the question among your opponents and even people who are in your own party, how are you spending the money and what are you spending the money on? That's the challenge that happens, independent of Mr. Krupp, and I'm sure he's an incredibly qualified person, but just independent of that, for the governor's office, it is a challenge to have to answer
I'm going to let
questions.
you step in, and then we'll move on after that.
It's hard. Both of us know it's hard to get talent in the state government, if not local government. And, Mitch Daniels in 2004 was able to recruit a lot of great talent to our state. And I think Braun is trying to do the exact same thing here. And so allowing some people to work from home, giving people different opportunities to get them from the private sector into the public sector, I think is important, right?
Well, the only thing, though, is he's been in the public sector for a number of years.
He has.
So,
he has.
he does have that public. But again,
he is a talent that could go out into the private sector and make probably a double salary.
But I also don't want to use this against him personally. This isn't a personal issue. I think it's just more of, again, for the governor's office, it's looking at the big picture, how you're spending that money. And again, if you could put that money toward 4 caseworkers, maybe that's better spent that way.
I want to move on to the letter that several congressional Republicans, including Congressmembers Marlin Stutzman, Victoria Spartz, and Aaron Houchin, sent to the WNBA regarding its handling of the Caitlin Clark situation. Mario, let's return to you here. Is this, how unusual is what we're seeing on the court? As I pointed out in my interview with Stutzman, we see very physical play all the time in the NBA and in the NHL.
Well, yes, but you're probably too young. But in the late 90s, you had Detroit Pistons beating up on Michael Jordan, right? You remember those days.
I do, yeah.
And people said, you've got to protect your star players. Michael Jordan was a transformational player. Caitlin, if anyone here was watching the WNBA prior to Caitlin Clark, I'd be shocked. Caitlin Clark has brought a lot of fans to the WNBA. I go watch WNBA games because of Caitlin Clark, and you have to protect these people. You have to protect your players. Does Congress need to get involved in this? Probably not. I think they're sending this letter just to make sure that the WNBA understands what they're doing and to make sure that some of these things look egregious. You know, the foul she's getting.
Laura, I've got about 45 seconds left. I do want to ask, is this political posturing, or does the Republican Study Committee have a point here?
Well, I think safety is important, right? But yes, I also think this is political posturing. I mean, these are Congress is deeply unpopular right now. They're getting ready to head home for an August recess where they're going to be back hearing from their constituents about high gas prices, the cost of groceries, an affordability crisis, data centers coming into their backyard. So they are really under the gun, and they are doing everything they possibly can to flip the narrative on other topics. But trust me, when Erin Houchin goes back in her district, she's going to be hearing from folks about the hyperscale data center coming in to the former Jefferson Proving Ground, and she's not going to be hearing about Caitlin Clark.
We're unfortunately going to have to leave it there. We're about out of time. Laura and Mario, thank you both for coming in, and we will be right back.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely of those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Circle City Broadcasting.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday, and be sure to check out our All Indiana Politics podcast. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.